Actually, the first time I met James was at the American Humanist Association conference in Boston, we were just talking about. The way this kind of played out is we were sitting, and I forget exactly who was speaking, but it was one of the breakout panel, or breakout sessions, and we're all sitting, and they finished their talk, and this guy, dressed sort of like this, stands up and starts asking a question. And he's got the accent and everything, so we immediately look over, it's like, that's Doctor Who. And no sooner am I like, what? The guy that was sitting next to him, J.T. Eberhard, tweets, I'm sitting next to Doctor Who. So, here we are, Doctor Who.
Thank you so much. And you know, I came by TARDIS. It's actually standing outside, but none of you can see it. It's only Time Lords can see it. Exactly, but wow, we have some serious nerds in the audience today. I'm impressed. You're going to out-nerd me by the end of this talk. Well, you know, after Carol's talk, I had many thoughts, but one of them was, I am so pissed I'm too old for space camp. You know, doesn't that sound like the most fantastic thing you could possibly do? I wish I could go to space camp. Well, I want to thank Sean for inviting me. I don't have a gift for you, Sean, but I assume my presence is gift enough, right? And for the volunteer, yes, exactly. I'll make a CD and I'll give it to you or something. You can listen to it as you drift off to sleep. I want to thank the volunteers and for everyone for maintaining this extraordinary building. I've been admiring with my new friends from the front row that amazingly hideous painting. No, it's wonderful, it's wonderful. Particularly the guy in the corner, the buff guy in the corner. I've been admiring that all weekend. And I want to thank you folks for staying until the very end of the conference. You are the true non-believers. Yes, we few, we happy few, we band of brothers and sisters. Yes, I have the accent. I am allowed to quote Shakespeare on this stage. They give us a little card, actually, when we leave England to say, certified to quote Shakespeare. So I'm James Croft. I work at, and I just pressed the button, there we go. I work at the Humanist Community Project at Harvard, and you can go there, harvardhumanist.org or humanistcommunityproject.org, which is an effort to bring together the wisdom of the free-thinking community onto one website to help people get ideas about how to build real communities for humanists, atheists, and the non-religious. But I'm not really here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about something else. You see, I spend a lot of time in airports. An awful lot of time. Not for the same reason this guy spends a lot of time in airports. Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. I should probably take it. Not for the same reason that that guy spent a lot of time in airports, although I did come through Minneapolis, St. Paul on my way here, and if someone had told me that it was so easy to have a sexual encounter in a toilet, then maybe I would have indulged. But no, I'm spending a lot of time in airports traveling around to events like this. And after a while sitting in airport waiting lounges, I started to notice something, things like this. Has anyone seen these? They put them up on billboards, they're on university campuses, and there are a lot of them in airports. They're basically posters which express particular values, and they have an image, in this case Abraham Lincoln, and a value, persistence, and then some quote. And they're from the Foundation for a Better Life. And I started to see these everywhere. Persistence, hard work, optimism, passion, strength. And I quite like them. And I went to the website to find out more about this organization. And they say this about themselves. The Foundation for a Better Life began as a simple idea to promote positive values. We believe that people are basically good and just need a reminder, and that the values we live by are worth more when we pass them on. Well, I think that's a lovely sentiment. I'm skeptical as to whether their hopes will be vindicated by empirical test. I doubt that people will become significantly better acting just by being reminded by a billboard to act better. But as a philosopher, I'm interested in values. I'm interested in the discussion of values in the public square, and I approve of their aim to try and bring to mind these positive values. And I appreciate, too, that this is, as far as I can tell, a secular initiative attempting to promote thinking about the values we hold and that we hold dear. But the more of these posters that I saw, the more something occurred to me. Few of these values are what you would call intellectual values or intellectual virtues. This is the sort of thing that occurs to philosophers like me when they're sitting in airport waiting lounges. You know, they stroke their beards and they think, oh, there's not very many intellectual virtues there. Perhaps clever people in the audience are now connecting the dots between this form of living life and my inability to get laid. I thought, well, I'm going to investigate this more deeply. So I went onto their website and looked, and they have a list of all the values that they've put on a billboard. And I went through them, and I counted how many values, this is how I spend my evenings, and how many of them I would consider intellectual values, the sorts of values we've come here to celebrate: skepticism, rationalism, reason, questioning, things like that. And only 3 of the 88 values I thought could be called intellectual values, and they were education, integrity, and innovation. All values that might have different meanings in other spheres of life. So integrity can refer to lots of things. Innovation can be sort of business innovation, things like that don't necessarily refer to an intellectual value. And I thought to myself, why is this? Why are other values that we care about as skeptics not represented on their website? And I found a fascinating thing. I found that when they'd launched the website, they did a survey, and they asked people to submit the values that are most important to them in their life. And this is what they write about that survey. We wanted to find out when we launched our new site what values were important to you. Since then, we received 9,803 submissions. Thank you. They're very polite. It's very nice. We wanted to show these values in an interesting way, and thought to create a values tag cloud. Each value has been sized in accordance with how many times it was suggested to us. As you can see, the results are interesting. And so I want you to think now, just for a moment, what do you think the results were? Which value, a single word encapsulating some moral or ethical value, do you think was the most submitted value in their survey out of these 9,803 submissions? And you can just call out guesses. What do you think? Goodness me. You people are very wise. There's their word cloud. Faith. Faith was the most important value. It's fucking enormous in comparison to the other ones. And if you look at that, I'm going to kill the tripod. But if you look up there, to the right of faith, in tiny grayed out letters, so small that it would fit in the crossbar of the H in the word faith, is the word truth. Looking as if it might be eaten up by it. Can you see it there? Do I have a laser beam? I don't know whether I do, but if I had a laser beam, I'd point it out to you. Don't give me a laser beam, by the way. I'll be very unwise. I start acting out Star Trek fantasies. It's not couth. You don't want to see that. Now, we don't know what was in the mind of people who submitted faith as a value. We have to admit that. They may not have the same definition in their head that we might imagine that they have. But when faith is the Goliath to truth's David, we have a problem, I think. And this problem is not going to be solved on its own by the rise of the religious nuns, right, N-O-N-E-S, which some people have talked about this weekend. Because Putnam and Campbell, the sociologists, investigated the religious beliefs of the people who say that they are not religious, and they found that most of them still believe in God. More than 50% of them will still say they believe in God. And only a weeny fraction of them, 3 out of the more than 3,000 people they had in their representative sample of the United States, said that they were atheists or humanists, something else. 3, which is statistically insignificant. So I think this problem about the sort of primacy of faith is going to haunt us for a while unless we do something about it. But I do believe that David can beat Goliath. We could turn this word cloud into something that represented a little more the values that we hold dear. Something like this one. And that's my own personal one. Yours might not be particularly, might not be the same. You can take a while with that. I think we can change that word cloud into something more like this one, but we'll need to do something about it. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. Because I believe that truth and reason are moral values, just like those other values on the big word cloud that they have, things like kindness, empathy, understanding, acceptance, fairness, tolerance. I think reason and truth are moral values just like that, and I want to convince you of that fact today. And I think that it's true what Carol said in her talk, that atheists are some of the most moral people that I've ever met. And I want to talk about one particular way that they're being moral when they follow reason. That's what my point is. And I want to further suggest that we have to convince people somehow to love truth, to have a lust for reason, to desire knowledge in a powerful way that goes deep into their core. We have to create a culture in which reason, questioning, skepticism, basically being a bloody-minded bastard asking difficult questions, is respected, is celebrated, is even revered. And I think this word cloud suggests we're not there yet, that we've got a lot of work to do. But before we get there, before I make my case, I have to do a quick digression on moral theory and the current evidence and consensus around how basically human beings' morals work. And I'm really happy that Andy presented some of this evidence in his talk as well. I'm not sure if he's still here, but if he is, good on you, man. Basically, and I'm drawing on Jonathan Haidt's, it's said Haidt's, Jonathan Haidt's moral foundation theory, which suggests that there are basically moral intuitions that human beings have are like a tongue, and it has 6 taste receptors on it. And people instinctively react when one of these taste receptors are triggered. And the 6 receptors are care and harm. So we see someone, for example, being harmed, and we go, ooh, I don't like that. And then we come up with moral reasons to justify that instinctive response. Fairness, so we see something that's unfair, and we say, ooh, yucky. It doesn't taste good in our moral tongue. Loyalty, which is we don't like it when people betray us or other people or some hierarchy. And that's distinguishable from these other things. All these, he's got tons of experiments that distinguish these different feelings. Respect or authority. People have this sense when some authority is traduced, they go, I don't like it, if they think the authority is legitimate. And we'll talk a bit more about that one in a second. A sense of purity, sanctity, some ideas that are more important than others, or some actions that are pure, that can be made impure, and people have an instinctive reaction against the idea of making something impure that they hold very dear to them. And liberty and oppression, we instinctively react against threats to people's autonomy. This is the argument, and it's supported by a huge amount of experimental data. And Jonathan Haidt also found, and his collaborators and lots of other people who've been working in this area have confirmed it, that different sorts of people respond to different degrees to each of these different moral tastes. So he found, for example, that people we consider to be liberals in this culture respond very strongly to the care, harm, fairness, and liberty oppression tastes. And they don't particularly consider very important things like respect and authority, loyalty and purity and sanctity, which may be why some people in the room were thinking, wait, that's not part of my moral framework when we went through those, because it's lower down in a list. He has cunning ways of demonstrating that actually even liberals do have those moral tastes and they do react to them, but they don't react as strongly as people who we would consider conservatives, for whom loyalty, respect and authority and purity, sanctity are much more important than they are for liberals. So basically that's the framework of understanding of how moral intuitions work, that basically we have a set of moral intuitions, they're deeply ingrained with us for evolutionary reasons, and they can be shaped by culture, and it gives people different levels of respect or different levels of taste for each of these moral flavors. That's his argument. And what I want to argue today is that he's missing at least one taste. I think we have a taste for truth. I think we have a taste for reason, a lust for truth, as I've called it in the title of my talk, that is not captured by any of those 6 moral foundations. But through philosophical argumentation, I'm going to try and convince you that it's plausible that we might have such a thing. And that means that if I can convince you of it, we should consider truth and reason a moral value, like these other moral values.